Hello, my name is David. I'd like to introduce you to a clinical research study named ROTATE. That's an acronym for Returning to Work After Trauma. The programme's aim is to support people in their quest to regain their vocational purpose, be that work or study. If you've recently experienced a traumatic injury in a road accident, fall, or assault, etc., it's hoped that you may want to take part in ROTATE. I'll first give you a little background on myself and my own trauma experience before telling you more about ROTATE. While viewing this video, you may find it helpful to occasionally press the pause button so that you don't suffer information overload. My background. I'm a 51-year-old retired IT security consultant from Stoke-on-Trent. In 2015, at the age of 45, I suffered a severe head injury in a collision between my bicycle and a 40-mile-per-hour car. The impact resulted in large bleeds in my brain, and neurosurgery was required to relieve the pressure. I was comatose for 4 weeks, followed by a further 10 weeks of hospitalisation. After becoming well enough to be independent of hospital care, I was discharged home. At this point, I rather naively thought that my biggest challenges were behind me. I spent the first few months at home doing little more than getting through each day, since my brain just didn't feel like my own anymore. I often use the term cloudy when describing how my brain felt. I knew it was futile, but it was the best I could come up with. Maybe you yourself can identify with the difficulty of describing how you feel in a meaningful way. Perhaps the simplest explanation you can give is that you simply don't feel normal anymore. So, my volunteering. After 12 months of doing relatively little with myself, I recognised that I needed a new life purpose. Returning to my previous job seemed an entirely unrealistic proposition. That line of work felt like from a time when I was on a different planet. Instead, I became determined to look into the voluntary sector opportunities. It's one of the most rewarding decisions of my life. I undertook numerous roles. One was with the Royal Voluntary Service in a befriending capacity, which essentially meant me sitting and chatting with an elderly person who was lonely. I say chatting, but in the most part it was listening. I found that simply offering an ear was enough to ease that loneliness for many folk. Befriending was minimal effort by me, but extremely rewarding for both of us. Another role I undertook was helping out as an IT buddy, which involved assisting the elderly or unskilled use the shared computers at my local library. My return to work. In the interest of brevity, I'm skipping past many of the stages of my recovery. Stated succinctly, the confidence and self-worth I gained through volunteering indirectly led me to resume my professional career in IT. This happened in 2017 with the Met Police in London, a full 2 years after my accident. I continued working for 2 further years as an IT professional with various customers before a legacy of my brain injury interjected. I'd always been good at picking up new skills, but recognised that I no longer had the ability to retain the knowledge of any new technology I attempted to learn. This meant it was time for me to retire. My recovery in context. To provide balance in my story, I shouldn't give the impression that everything is hunky-dory and I've recovered to exactly as I was pre-injury. I still have deficiencies, but have worked hard on strategies to cope with them. Like most people who have experienced a brain injury, I have dreadful short-term memory, but I make notes religiously. I no longer have taste or smell senses. My touch sensation is hugely impaired and I don't recognise feelings of pain in most circumstances. The latter sounds like a positive outcome, but it's not really a healthy situation to be in. That's enough about me. I prefer to talk about you. So, participants being recruited. Have you recently experienced a traumatic injury? Perhaps you're in a hospital ward pondering what your immediate future looks like. Maybe you're beyond the hospital stage and have been discharged home and are thinking, what should I do next? I just feel so aimless. Either way, you're likely to be feeling challenged by the next phase of your recovery. Let's call it striving for normality. In your personal situation, normal may include vocational goals of return to professional employment or studying at school, college or university. These aspirations may feel unattainable right now and you don't know where or how to start moving forward. You needn't feel alone. We may be able to help you. We'd like you to consider participating in a research study whose goal is enabling survivors of traumatic injuries regain their vocational purpose. So the Rotate professionals. The Rotate programme is supported by the NHS and several leading universities in the field of major trauma. You'd be engaging with skilled professionals who have vast experience of helping people with needs like your own. The approach would be to develop individualised support strategies for your particular needs and circumstances. If you feel this is something you'd like to learn about, we'd love to hear from you. Then there's patient involvement. Before explaining how you could get involved, you're going to see 2 videos from 2 survivors of major trauma who've experienced their own personal recovery journey. These people are supporting the Rotate programme with the hope of helping people like you. A positive aspect of the Rotate study is the way it is engaged with trauma survivors who've experienced many of the feelings you're likely to be going through. These folk have come through their bleakest time and made substantial recoveries. It's important for me to state that the term recovery typically doesn't mean returning to how you were prior to your injury. Following an injury, your life may be unavoidably different, but you will make it.
Hello, my name's Greg Weston. I'm here to talk about my accident and recovery. On June the 25th, 2011, I went on a lad's golfing trip down to Bournemouth, where I went out on the evening, fell over, hit my head on a curb, and ended up in a coma, which I will talk about in a minute. I just want to paint a picture of what I was like before my accident. So I went to a good school, a good private school in Solihull. I had a very good education, went to university in Leeds, moved down to London where I worked for very successful banks in the banking industry. I had a great life. I was very, very sporty. When I was at school, I was in the school cricket team, played for the county at badminton and school number 1 at squash. I was a very, very sporty and active person. And I guess I was like, I suppose all of us do, I was taking my life for granted really and failing to appreciate it. So I feel like I ran the London Marathon, for instance, and the Great North Run up in Newcastle as well. So as I say, I was taking things for granted really at that stage. So I went out on the evening of playing golf with my friends down in Bournemouth, and I fell over. I fell over and hit my head on the curb, which is a relatively small thing considering the catastrophic effect it had on me and everyone else. What's really strange is I actually am told that I walked onto the ambulance, having hit my head on a curb. I was taken to the local hospital, which was the Pool Hospital down there, and they checked me over and stuff. And then actually when I was in Pool Hospital, I actually slipped into a coma, and they had to take me to Southampton Hospital. Southampton Hospital is fortunately for me is a leading brain injury hospital that specialises in brain traumas. And there I was on a life support machine for 3 weeks, and the outcome was looking so bleak that the medics called my dad into a room and said, "Look, Mr. Weston, it's really not looking good. Greg has not shown any sign of recovery whatsoever in the 3 weeks he's been on the life support machine, and it literally is just the life support machine that's keeping him alive." And they said to my dad, "Look, if he does wake up, which in our professional opinion he won't, then he's just going to be completely brain dead. He's going to have use of none of his limbs. He's just going to be just a vegetable, basically. Would Greg want to live like that?" And my dad said no, he wouldn't. So as a father, he had to make a very, very difficult decision and say, "I give you the permission to turn off the machine." And this is just, it's a miracle. But as they literally went to turn off the machine, I opened my eyes, and so I think it was someone, whether it was God or a power above, was saying it's not his time yet. and from that point on, my family knew that it was going to be a very, very long road to recovery. I got transferred from Southampton Hospital up to Warwick Hospital, where I was in the intensive care unit there. I have no memories at all of being in Warwick Hospital. I then got taken to the Leamington Rehabilitation Hospital, where I spent a year there. Initially I was in bed in the intensive care unit, and I was being hoisted in and out of bed. You know, having to I couldn't go to the toilet, couldn't get washed or dressed or anything like that. When it was eventually well enough to get out of bed, I was actually paralysed from the waist down. It's my accident. I've got a when I was in a coma, I had to have part of my skull removed up here, and they had to put in a titanium plate. And I think medically, what it is when you get hit on the left-hand side, it's meant to affect your right-hand side. However, for me, it's got hit on the left-hand side, and it's affected my left-hand side. So I wear a splint on my left leg, and I have struggled. I haven't got proper function in my left arm either. But when I was well enough to get out of bed, yeah, I couldn't walk, and I was in a wheelchair, which was a really, really, I found it a dreadful time. Like, I really struggled mentally with being in a wheelchair, having been so active before my accident. To then be confined to a wheelchair was incredibly upsetting. And the medics have a duty of care to basically say to patients that if they're not able to walk again, they have to tell them. If they have that information available to them, they have to tell them straight away. And I'll never forget the day where the medics came to me and said, "Look, Greg, you've not had any sign of movement in your leg in the past sort of 6 months or 8 months or however long it was. We have to give you the news that you're never going to walk again." And it was like someone had literally stuck a dagger through my heart. A father to a young son who's just wants to play football with his dad and all that kind of stuff. It was just, it was literally a heartbreaking. So I spent, probably about another 6 months in a wheelchair, confined to a wheelchair. And then this is again, it's just unbelievable, really. But I have a good family friend. One of my best friend's father came to visit me, and he sat at the end of the bed, and he touched my foot. And he said, "Greg, your foot is really, really cold." And well, obviously I couldn't feel it at the time, so he said, "I'm going to give it a massage." So he rubbed it with his warm hands, and as he did, I kicked my left leg. He was like, "Greg, do you know what you just did there?" And I was like, "I might move my leg." And he did it again. I kicked it again. He called the nurses in straight away, and who called the physiotherapist in, and they said, "Greg, I think this means you could start to walk again," which was like literally just the most magical words ever. But again, it was a slow process. So I began having to walk using it's called like a tripod stick. So it's a walking stick with 3 large sort of legs on the bottom to give you the ultimate kind of support. And I used to have to wear like a sort of like a weight training belt sort of thing with handles on it around my back. So the healthcare assistants would have to hold on to the handles on the back of this belt, and then I would walk with the pod stick. And then so I had to go from that to then I was able to walk, so I was only able to walk supervised while the physios were training me to walk again. And then I had to go from that to being able to walk with unsupervised. And when I was at that stage, you then have to learn how to walk on different surfaces, how to walk on stepping up a curb, walking on grass, walking on gravel, whatever it may be, all the different surfaces, walking indoors. I mean, the brain injury is catastrophic in so many different ways, not just physically, mentally, but again, I'll come on to that in a minute. So then, I'll talk about that now, because as I say, it's not just the physical effects of a brain injury, it's the mental effects. Like, I have a terrible disorder called obsessive compulsive disorder, which basically you just feel like you're going crazy, and it drives other people crazy. I know, particularly like my son and people around me. Like, it's almost like your mind doesn't believe what you're seeing. I mean, it's just, my son said, it's weird. It is very, very abnormal. Things like light switches, like when a light switch is on, push it down, and you can see the light switch like this. But for some reason, in my mind, when I turn it off, so the top bit is flat against the wall and the bottom bit is sticking out, my mind just seems to think, oh, I need to double, triple, quadruple check that. So I like run my fingers under it and stuff like that, and it is incredibly strange. I don't know how to describe it really. It's basically like your brain doesn't trust your eyes. So with light switch, whether it be locking my car, it can get even worse than that. It can get things like putting things in the middle of like a table or something like that. I mean, it's actually made it quite real. I was actually on the phone to my dad once, I remember, and I've got like an ornamental fruit bowl in the middle of my table, and it wasn't in the middle. Someone had moved it over to the left-hand side, and I couldn't even wait until the end of the conversation with my dad, so I put the phone down on the table, got up and moved the fruit bowl in the middle of the table. Of course, when I got back to my phone, my dad had hung up, because you know, you wouldn't you? It is ridiculous, and it does drive people crazy. People close to me, like my cleaners and stuff like that, found it incredibly annoying sort of thing. But I've also suffered from depression. I'm on medication for depression, as you'd expect from something like this. I've had problems with my bladder. It's just, so the one thing I try and explain about a brain injury is not just a physical thing. It's not just physical, it's mental as well. Going forward though, I'm very, very positive about my life. One thing that that has helped me greatly in my recovery is volunteering. I volunteer for the hospital. I was actually a patient in at the Leamington Spa Rehabilitation Hospital. Very proud to say I've got an award, a Special Achievement Award, from the Mayor of Warwick to recognise my services there. And what I find about that again is it's brilliant. That I can, as I keep saying, I can use my experience to help other people. So there'll be patients in there. They've all had brain injuries. So there'll be patients that can't use their left arm. So I'll give them exercises like this to do bicep curls and to do exercises. We also do a bit of meditation. We play ball games to help improve hand-eye coordination. That's fantastic. It's wonderful, as I say, that I can help other people from having had my accident. I always say that I think I had my accident for a reason, so that I can help other people. Again, I set myself some physical challenges. There was a girl who was poorly with a brain tumour, and so I walked up Mount Snowdon, which was quite an accolade for someone that was told they'd never walk again. It actually took me 7.5 hours. I remember doing it with two very good friends from school who were just amazing, really, because they were both very fit. They'd actually done the Snowdon Marathon like a couple of months before, and they said it was easier to do the Snowdon Marathon than it was to walk up with me, because it was so cold. Wind was coming down sideways, it was raining, sleeting, it was just horrific conditions. We got to the halfway point, because it was like this, the halfway point was just a steep path, and when I remember getting to the halfway point thinking, I feel quite optimistic about that. We did that in 2 hours, and I thought, oh God, that's brilliant. If we could do it in 4 hours, that would be wonderful. However, the second half goes from like a steep path to rocks, to actual sort of rocks. The rocks were about 1 foot high, and my friends John and Paddy had to literally lift up my left leg, because my left leg's so weak. I can't do this with my left leg. They had to literally physically lift up my left leg over the rocks, and it was such an ordeal. It was just unbelievable. My walking aid, my crutch, was got stuck in between two rocks at one point. James's shoe came off, and the heel of his actual boots completely came off, so he had to walk up part of it with no heel on his shoe. my shoe came off. It got stuck between a rock, and that came off, and they were having to help me put it back on. It was the biggest challenge I've ever done, but it was really rewarding, obviously, to get to the top, and we managed to raise nearly £3,000 for brain tumour. And then the following year, I did the Stratford 10K, again to raise money for a poor girl again, and I mean, it's official to say I came last. It took me about 2.5 hours, but it was really tough because half of it was on the road, some of which were really steep, and it was actually harder going down the the ones that were going downwards. But also there was the other half was through a park with then like really difficult, like uneven ground and stuff like that. I got a standing ovation at the end. I'm not sure whether that was because they were pleased that they could all go home now, but that was finally coming at the end or not. But it was yeah, it was very rewarding. I was able to give the little girl a raise money for the medal that I was awarded, so that was great. So all in all, just to sort of summarise now, I would just like to give hope to anyone that has had a serious brain injury or has been through a traumatic event. As I say, I was never told to walk again. I walked up Mount Snowdon. Mentally, I'm in such a better place now. I don't irritate people as much as I did do before my accident. I don't fall out with people as much. I've come a long way, and I would just like to give everyone hope and use my favourite quote from Audrey Hepburn, that nothing is impossible. The word itself says, I'm possible. It can be done, positive mindset, and you can overcome things. I'll probably wrap it up there now, but it's been lovely to share my experience with you. I hope this helps anyone. If anyone would like to look at it, I have my own Facebook page called Gregory's Journey Towards Independence, which I use to post things like walking at Mount Snowdon and just other positive things that maybe have helped people. So at that point I will say goodbye to you all and good luck. Thank you.
People like Greg and Ali are supporting the Rotate programme. They help to give non-clinical insight into some of the challenges you're facing. So how does this happen? Trauma survivors at participating hospitals will be invited to take part in the study. If you decide to register, you will 1. Begin the Rotate engagement within 12 weeks of your injury, and your involvement will last up to 12 months. 2. Be assigned an occupational therapist who will regularly meet with you on a one-to-one basis. If needed, you can also receive support from a psychologist. The programme will be tailored to your needs, assessing the impact of your injury on your ability to return to work or study. It's important for you to know that although you've unlikely returned to work yet, you are a very important part of this study. How to engage? Rotate has its own website, rotate.org.uk. That's ROWTATE.org.uk. From there, click on the Patients link, where you'll find 3 contact options: a web form, email addresses, phone numbers and contact names. Please don't feel overawed about engaging with Rotate. All you need to do is make a small first step. From there, the Rotate team will guide you along. We'd love to hear from you.